Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is your course in charge Dr. NIGHAT. Today I would like to start my third session about course Radio News Reporting and Production. In this session we will discuss some characteristics of radio news. Introduction. As we all know, the radio should actually play a practical role in the social and economic development through creating awareness and favorable public opinion towards social change and development. This is not an easy job in view of the very low percentage of literacy and deep-rooted prejudices. In this field of informational activity in the third world countries, radio still plays a role that no other medium can possibly do. So, for example, in our country, the radio serves the agricultural like any other input, and it is the best convener of information direct to the farmers. This is the why rural broadcast is very popular in Pakistan. There has been an enormous expansion in the newspaper industry during the last decades. Television network is also there, but it may safely be stated that the radio still remains its prime position as the first and far-reaching medium of news transmission. It also has a definite role in channelizing the national life, particularly in developing countries. It is the medium of masses, providing most immediate service to countless millions of listeners. So all government, whether totalitarian or democratic, have utilized the power of this medium for projecting their political philosophies. Radio journalism is also called electronic or process journalism because of its special nature, particularly its speeds and frequency. War or peace, radio's importance cannot be undermined. Television has its own attraction, but it has a limited role in the transmission of news, particularly in developing and underdeveloped countries. So radio news is not to be compared with television news. Still, there are some points of comparison and contrast between radio news bulletin and newspaper. A newspaper comes after 20 hours. A newspaper comes out after 24 hours. Against this, the Central News Organization of Radio Pakistan is broadcasting one news bulletin every hour and also in different languages. During a national or international crisis, radio is the most wanted source of news. Its speed is unbeatable. Radio news bulletins are short, containing only important items with most essential details, whereas a newspaper can furnish all possible details and pictures. Radio news is always very selective, and the selection is based on news values and certain policy consideration, whereas newspaper publish all sort of news including long stories about political fights, accidents and crimes. They also publish a special edition and colored pictures to attract more buyers. So the element of commercialism is quite obvious. It is claimed that radio reports present the healthy side of the society, and it is called a positive approach. Radio wants to attract more and more listeners, but it has nothing to sell like newspaper. For a newspaper, the commercial aspect is almost equal important for its survival. Newspapers create a spatial attraction through various techniques, including fine get-up and impressive display of news with catchy headlines and photographs and cartoons. Sometimes short but interesting stories are displayed as box items. Radio cannot do all this. However, against the cold printed words of newspaper, it has the advantage of using human voice, both male and female, for newscasts. The voice makes or mars the quality of the news through its performance. Therefore, the newsreader also occupies a unique position in the transmission of reports effectively. A sweet voice with conversational style makes the news more appealing. For radio news, the listeners are not required to be educated person. It is meant for the ears alone. Therefore, radio uses simple and spoken language, whereas the language of the newspaper is a written language which is essentially different from the spoken language. Several other things like the use of brackets and inverted commas are common feature of printed language, but in radio, the newsreader creates the desired impact through correct pauses and stresses and delivery of words. News reading is a very special art and a part of news communication. Each medium has its own features and requirements. It uses and conveys news in its own style. In case of major news event, almost the same news material is received in the newsroom of newspaper and radio from various national and international news agencies and official sources, but a radio editor displays greater speed, skill and power of decision making regarding the use of incoming material. The radio editor must be in a position to show his talent with a given time, which is very short. Sometimes an important story is to be edited and composed and broadcast within a few minutes. Now come to characteristics of radio news. These characteristics are truth or accuracy, objectivity, simplicity and clarity, promptness, brevity, and severity. Radio news has its own characteristics. Main virtue of radio news, which are always kept in mind while preparing a news story, is truth. It is the essence and the first basic quality of radio news. Incorrect and unconfirmed reports broadcast by radio may lead to very serious consequences. It will not only mislead the listeners but may also damage the national cause. Radio is a national institution and therefore particular care is taken in using the news reports received from international agencies who may not be quite objective in certain cases. Some of the big agencies have their own policies and angles in covering news regarding different countries and culture and religion. So special care should be taken to see the truth. In case of international event, reports from more than one agency should be seen and checked to verify the facts. In case of unusual happening like accident, explosions, hijacking, and natural calamities, the first report received in the newsroom is generally incomplete and sometimes unconfirmed. Since radio is the first to transmit such news, greater responsibility lies on the shoulder of radio editor, who must not put unconfirmed news on the air. The Pakistan Broadcasting Corporation newsroom has developed a reliable process to check and verify such reports before broadcast. In fact, the credibility of news is based on this first quality, that it should be accurate. Next characteristic of radio news is objectivity or impartiality. It means that editors should not judge the report from their personal point of view. There should be no color or comment and the news item should be presented with correct facts and figures if needed. The source of the news may also be mentioned. Special care is taken in case of news items of sensitive nature involving foreign policy or reports about foreign dignitaries and courts' judgments. All biased consideration should be discarded by the editor, and objectivity should be maintained at all cost. One-sided picture of the news is not desirable. Now, next characteristic, clarity. Clarity and simplicity. Another essential quality of news writing is its clarity. Because radio listeners belong to all group of people, including illiterates. Literary and technically, language should be avoided, and the news must be conveyed in clear and simple sentences. There should be no ambiguity or confusion about the events after listening to the radio news bulletins. If anything is not clear while reading a newspaper, the reader can go through it again and again, but the listeners of radio cannot do so. Therefore, it is an important requirement that news should be described in short and simple sentences, free from complex construction. Clarity is required both in the expression and in the selection of simple words to describe the news. Now, another characteristic of news is promptness. Radio is generally first to give the news, so the editor has to fight against the clock. There is a possibility that in the excitement of being first with the news, a radio editor may forget to meet other requirements like accuracy and authenticity. This is not fair. He must do the job promptly but faultlessly. Race against time, a matter of routine for radio newsmen. Another characteristic of radio news is brevity. Because of its limited space, a news bulletin can accommodate only essential facts of a news story. So an art of precise writing has to be demonstrated to explain the news report in minimum words, excluding all unnecessary details but including all basic facts. Next characteristic is severity. Radio news should be free from sentiments. A radio editor should also not be funny or humorous, and he must demonstrate good taste and balance. Sarcasm and irony must be avoided. There is also no room for sensationalizing. One can see at a glance in our Urdu newspaper that on the first page there are many sensational stories which in fact are not so investigative as they appear to be due to their display and screaming headlines. A radio news item must be free from suspense and sensations. It has to be sober, balanced and well worded. As you all know, Pakistan is an Islamic country, therefore the requirements of its ideology must be respected. Pakistan has soft corner for all Muslim countries, so special care is taken in dealing with the news which relate to the mutual interest of brotherly countries. There are certain other requirements of the national policy which should also not be ignored in the treatment of news reports relating to international relationship. Similarly, report against any religion, sect or provinces is also not considered fit for radio, because anything likely to create bad will among various segments of the society should be avoided in the national interest. This is all for today's session. Listen it carefully and make some notes. Take care. Allah Hafiz.